The new John Deere 8000 series tractors have entered the marketplace and are a formidable force. They have designed and manufactured a new product that advances their product offering significantly from their old 60 series. Their dealers have joyously embraced their new tractor, and for good reason. For nearly a decade, they've had to compete with the Magnum. This program will give an overview of John Deere's new tractor line and the advancements they've made. We'll review the current features as outlined in their product brochures and comparison data they provide to their dealers. Remember, any new product introduction, including ours in 1987, carries a lot of momentum during the selling season. There are a few distinct differences between the Magnum and the 8000 series Deere. We want you to have a complete tour of the 8000 series tractor as we compare it to the Magnum. The models stack up this way. Deere offers 4 models, the 8100 at 160 PTO horsepower versus our 7220 at 155. The 8200 comes in at 180 horsepower against our 7230 at 170. Deere's 8300 is rated at 200 horsepower and our 7240 is rated at 195. And finally, the 8400 offers 225 horsepower against our 7250 at 215. While the Deere tractors offer slightly more horsepower in a model comparison, the important thing to remember is to keep the comparisons as shown here. Deere would like to start with our 7210 against their 8100, when in fact their older 7800 should be used for the smaller tractor comparison. Let's start our head-to-head comparisons in the cab. The first thing you'll notice is their overall visibility. The Wasp-waist design of the engine compartment and new steering column styling allows for a clear view to the front wheels. They have tapered the ROPS corner posts to achieve a wider view out the front windshield. Let's continue looking around the inside of the cab. There's a foot release on the floor which disengages the steering column. A hand control on the right side adjusts the final locked height of the column. You'll notice there is no instrumentation in the dash. Behind the steering wheel is a high-low headlight beam indicator and directional turn indicators. Now, let's look at several new characteristics to the operator's right. Deere's new CommandARM mounts to the seat, so as the seat is swiveled, the control arm moves with the operator. Also, to the operator's right side is the instrument cluster and environmental controls. The hydraulic flow controls are mounted to the rear of this console. Let's look at some of these a bit closer. The deluxe instrument panel incorporates analog gauges for coolant temperature, fuel level, and the optional oil pressure gauge. If the optional radar system is installed, these 6 small touch pads are used to change the digital display to read out such things as ground speed, wheel slip, and diagnostic codes. A cluster of indicator lights informs the operator of system warnings or failures. Even with the added sophistication of the instrumentation, Deere does not incorporate an automatic shutdown system like Magnum. Along the top row are the climate controls, blower switch, windshield wiper, and the lighting switch. Additionally, they group the warning flasher switch, mechanical front-wheel drive switch, and rear windshield wiper switch together toward the rear. The front-wheel drive switch location seems a bit unusual by not being near the front of the console. The 8000 series hydraulic controls are neatly grouped with a visual display of the remotes. 3 remotes are standard with the Deere, just like our 7250. If you look at the location and operation of the Magnum hydraulic levers in comparison, you'll find they're conveniently located and easy to reach and operate. Deere's new touch set controls work with implements which also incorporate electro-hydraulic components. One button on the panel sets the implement's depth, the other the raise height. For standard implements without electro-hydraulics, the flow and time of flow can be set for any of the remotes. Then by activating a remote lever, the flow to that remote runs for the time you've set. All of their remotes share the same 30 GPM pump. Also, the electronic controls take away any feel of the remote circuit. You can't easily feather in a remote valve if you need to. The Deere controls do allow for flow rate adjustment using the controls, but since they're electronic, you won't get any mechanical feedback. Located under the right armrest are the hitch controls. They are covered just like Magnum to prevent accidental adjustment. Mounted to the right front corner post is a look-ahead monitor which reads out engine speed, gear selection, and ground speed. There are also two systems indicators, a warning and stop engine alert. One control we didn't mention yet is the field cruise control. At great expense to Deere, they've introduced an electronically controlled governor. The operator sets the throttle control to the rated speed, like 2200 RPM, then uses this control to reduce the engine RPM to a desired engine speed, like 1900 to 2000 RPM. This control is just an upper limit engine speed knob. This new electronic governor system gives the 8000 series tractor a comparable horsepower and torque rise as well. Let's investigate this a little closer, since Deere is truly excited about their new power bulge capabilities, something Magnum has always had. Let's compare the 8400 and the 7250. The working range of the Magnum and Deere engine is 1700 to 2200 RPM. Power bulge can be shown in this way. On this graph, you'll notice engine RPM along the bottom and horsepower above rated along the side. The Deere tractor and Magnum are nearly identical. In fact, the Deere increases its horsepower by 22 versus the Magnum's increase of 24 horsepower. The Magnum engine also has a comparable PTO torque curve. Again, looking at this graph, you see the engine RPM along the bottom and the PTO torque in foot-pounds along the side. The torque rise characteristics are nearly the same. Magnum owners have enjoyed this extra pulling power to get them through the tough spots for years. Now that we've looked at the controls and engine characteristics, let's look at their transmission. The 8000 series tractor introduces a new 16-speed power shift transmission with 16 forward gears and 4 reverse. It's electronically controlled using the gated control lever. Magnum has an 18-speed power shift, plus a creeper option. We did find one problem, and it was during roading. When the tractor reached 17 to 20 miles per hour, the tractor began to lope severely. This effect would only go away if we reduced speed. The Magnum doesn't do that. We've proved the soundness and durability of the Magnum transmission through the years by running several 10,000-hour tests. Each time we tear a transmission down, we continue to be amazed at the small amount of component wear. And as we advertise, that's over 65 million customer operation hours on the Magnum since it was introduced. Plus, when you compare the gears in the transmissions, you notice Deere is using much noisier straight-cut gears instead of the quiet, modern helical cut gears found in the Magnum transmission. Before we continue, let's review Deere's new features. First, the visibility is excellent in all directions. The increased amount of glass over their older models is a marked improvement. The design of the operator's seat and controls is well designed, but the new electronic controls will take a bit of getting used to. The forward display in the right front console is nice, although some of the readings are redundant to the instrument cluster. All of the controls located in the right side operator's console are easy to reach and are clearly marked. We question the location of the instrument cluster since the operator has to turn his head and look to the right. Also, the power shift transmission is going to be an area of concern for new owners. Plus, the loping problem we encountered was very disconcerting while roading. Now, let's move on to the power plant, the engine. Deere offers two engines. the 7.6 liter used in the 8100, 8200, and 8300, and their 8.1 liter used in the 8400 tractor. The robust 8.3 liter engine found in the Magnum tractors have a built-in advantage due to its larger displacement. Reliability is the key, and the Magnum 8.3 liter engine delivers. The first thing to recognize about the Deere engine is that it is the frame of the tractor. The transmission is too, and also the final drive. By being a structural part of the vehicle, all the bending and twisting loads placed on the tractor are transmitted through the engine. That's why it looks so heavy. It has to be to absorb all the loads it has to take. Consider heavy tanks and front weights. The load is carried by the oil pan and its joints. Deere has been recognized in recent years by making vast improvements in fuel economy. Not so for the 8400. New data suggests their 8.1 liter engine burns more fuel than Magnum. Plus, we've seen the 7.6 liter engine before. The same basic engine was introduced in 1960 and updated several times. The cylinder bore was increased in the mid-1970s, and the cylinder block was revised for an attempt at the over-the-road truck market in the late 80s. Let's look at this engine a little closer. First, the water pump is mounted to the engine directly. A single seal separates the engine oil from the coolant supply. The water pump is exposed to high vibration from the timing gear train. Magnum uses a modern belt drive on purpose to avoid this problem. Plus, if a seal on the Magnum water pump were to fail, the coolant would fall harmlessly outside the oil pan. The engine fan on the Deere is gear-driven instead of belt-driven. The gear drive has its own lubrication reservoir and needs to be serviced every 250 hours. There is no engine coolant filter on the Deere engine. A coolant conditioning additive must be poured in the radiator from the top. And talk about cooling the engine, look inside. Deere has suspended the cylinder liner from a flange at the top of the block. This point is subjected to the hottest part of the firing stroke, and you won't find any cooling jackets in this area either. The Magnum cylinder liner is mounted at the midpoint. This mid-mount liner means the water cooling jackets can reach the uppermost part of the firing stroke to keep the engine running cool. The last new feature you should know about regarding the Deere 8.1 liter engine is their use of an air-to-air aftercooler. The Magnum engine uses a water aftercooler on the 7240 and 7250. A water aftercooler works well, especially in dusty conditions. Let's now turn our attention to one of the finest features Deere has to offer its customers, maneuverability. In areas of the world where row crop farmers are utilizing 30-inch rows and using 12-row equipment like cultivators and sprayers, the 8000 series has the ability to steer back into the next set of rows. Their turning radius, using 16.9 R30 tires on the front set to 60-inch spacing, can cut a 17-foot turn. That's very impressive. Deere has been able to achieve this by allowing the wheels to turn under the engine. Their new front axle design has been patented and has given them a good tight turn. But what's this? A Magnum following right behind the Deere. Is this magic? No. Since January of 1995, the Magnum can be ordered with a specially row crop axle installed at no additional cost. This axle allows for more row crop tire choices. For instance, we've placed 18.4 R42 tires on the back and 13.6 R28 tires on the front of this 7220. And we set the front treads to 64 inches. So if these two tractors were used in 12-row narrow conditions, the Deere will make the turn directly back into the next set of rows. And as this demonstration shows, So will the Magnum with the proper axle and tire combination. So much for Deere's big advantage in row crop. We believe in playing up your strong points, and Deere has done an excellent job at getting their tractor to steer sharper than any currently available two-wheel drive tractor. But remember, you also have the four-wheel drive row crop special tractors to offer your customers. So, when it comes to turning radius, remember, if your customer is on 30-inch rows with 12-row equipment, it's a non-issue. Now, let's turn our attention to serviceability. The 8000 series has again made several improvements in this area over their older tractors. Ground-level maintenance on both the Deere and the Magnum are good. The Deere 8000 series located the fuel fill next to the steps. The Magnum's fuel fill is just as convenient. Just stand in the wide steps and fill the tank. The coolant recovery bottle is also at ground level, which is excellent for adding engine coolant only. But remember, when coolant conditioner must be added, it needs to be poured into the radiator directly through an opening in the top of the hood. Most of the other regularly checked items can also be found at ground level. The rear side shields can be removed easily by lifting them from the tractor. The only drawback we found was they were tethered. This causes a problem by scratching the painted surfaces as they hang in the breeze. The front side shields can be taken off only after 4 bolts have been removed. The front grille screen was easy to remove, but it reveals a mess of hoses being captured by a bar running the width of the radiator. This is a potential rubbing point, which means the hoses will wear through in this area. Replacing the grille screen is not as easy as removing it. We found it was difficult to get the side of the screen to line up with the side panel before locking it down. And while we're talking about access to the engine, we noticed Deere still has not elected to build this new tractor with a hood that raises like Magnum. To remove the hood, you first have to unplug the headlight connector. We noticed this connector was not watertight and found corrosion on the terminals. After additional bolts are removed, it takes at least 2 people to remove the hood to gain access to the engine compartment. Once the hood is removed, a clear view of the engine and its components can be seen. To clean out the radiator, 2 bolts can be removed from either side to allow the front radiator to slide out of the way of the rear radiator. But with all the hoses in front, they got caught on a fitting, making it difficult to slide. And what's this? There are really 4 radiators here. A hydraulic cooler, a fuel cooler, an air conditioning system cooler, and an engine coolant radiator. That kind of system drives up the cost of repair. Another item of concern we noticed on the Deere engine is the type of fuel filter used. As you can see, fuel runs down the side of the engine whenever it's removed. Now, let's move down the right side of the tractor to the cab air filter. The filter box is removed and the filter can be serviced at ground level. But how does fresh air enter this system? The external air for the cab enters through the louvers above the door. It then flows across the roof of the cab, down the right-hand corner post, and finally into the cab air filter under the floor. All of the fresh air going into the cab must pass through this small opening in the cab filter box. It's just about the size of 2 quarters. Plus, there's a noticeable lack of air vents in the cab. There's none at all in the headliner, and only a couple around the operator's legs. Moving around the back of the tractor, we found a sight gauge for the hydraulic oil level check. This sight gauge can only be used when the tractor is parked on a flat, level surface. The dipstick on the Magnum more accurately measures the oil in the transmission. because it goes into the center of the housing where the reading is more consistent. While we're at the hitch area, notice the hitch up-down control switch mounted near the hydraulic remotes. The locking bat handle switch is used to raise and lower the hitch during implement hookup or detachment. We think the position is a bit awkward by forcing the operator to reach in and around potential pinch points. The Magnum also offers remote hitch raise and lower switches. The Magnum switches are much easier to use since they're mounted near the fenders. Deere can be proud of their overall improvements to their tractor line, which now offers Magnum-like features. But only Magnum can offer your customers real value. We've found the new Deere tractors are very expensive. You'll find the Magnum to provide the return on investment customers are looking for. With over 50,000 Magnum tractors in service today, the resale value and lasting power of this magnificent tractor has been well proven. Reliability and durability have been built into this tractor. Since its introduction, the Magnum has set a world-class pace to follow. The Magnum was and still is ahead of its time, and ever since the competition has been running to catch the Magnum.